So speaking of preparedness, what did you start off? Did both of you start off in the preparedness mindset? Did that something happen after you met? And
Well, as South Floridians, we've always been hurricane preppers,
Yes.
and
okay,
that means that we've always had a couple of weeks supply instead of 3 days supply
Right.
of food in the pantry in case a storm knocks the power out.
Right. Batteries, flashlights, blankets, tent. We even had at one point, I think, a little blow up canoe because there's a lot of water where we are. Canned goods, all the stuff that you would expect for hurricane preparedness.
Now, I had volunteered in the past to be part of a DMAT, a disaster medical assistance team for Hurricane Andrew. That was way back in 1992. But I really have to say, for me, it was Hurricane Katrina in 2005, because it was then that I saw what happens when the ambulance really isn't just around the corner. I mean, not that we didn't have hundreds of medical personnel converging on the Gulf Coast. Even that was happening even before the storm was over.
Yep.
But the providers and the technology just couldn't get to the people that needed it because of flooding.
Yeah.
Right.
And so with Katrina, it was flooding that separated victims from the medical help they needed. Right. But an earthquake could make roads impassable. I mean, really, any disaster with enough casualties can overwhelm the current infrastructure, and of course, the pandemic-type diseases that are coming down the pike. I mean, if you have this one had a 1% death rate, if I had something that had a 10% death rate, then you're going to be in a downward spiral that society might not be able to recover from.
Not quickly.
That's right.
Not quickly, absolutely. But my dad was military, so he had that mindset from my childhood. We did a lot of camping. We had to start the fires and put up the tents, and he taught us a lot of skills that he wasn't saying, hey, the world might end one day, so I'm teaching you this stuff. But he was just sort of imparting, and he was also a Boy Scout.
Right.
So he was just, teaching us these skills just naturally to pass them on. But yeah, we had been in South Florida since 74. It was actually pretty quiet hurricane seasons for quite a while until Andrew, which is why everyone got, so surprised with it being so horrible, and nobody was really prepared for it because it had been so quiet. Every year you get the threat, the sky is falling, and then it doesn't fall. And people are like, whatever, it'll turn. It's going to go somewhere other place. It had been focused on a certain area, like where he was living at the time. And I was down a little bit further inland and on a similar path of the hurricane. And it shifted overnight. It just took a left turn and went down to South Miami, where it was not expected at all. They were supposed to get light winds and some rain, and suddenly they were getting the full brunt, and those people were completely unprepared.
Yeah, neighborhoods just completely full.
And nobody was even telling those folks, hey, you might lose electricity, get some stuff. They were just like, it's not going to come anywhere near you. It's going to hit, Broward-Dade County line. And it went south into Miami. So they got whacked. But anyway, we were very prepared.
Right.
Me as a kid growing up with my dad being military, we always had stuff.
But coming out publicly as a medical doctor and talking about things that are definitely against the conventional medical wisdom, that was something different. We decided over time, seeing that there wasn't really an actively licensed medical doctor that was talking about this stuff or writing about this stuff. We figured that if we could teach the average person how to deal with injuries and illness, maybe put some medical supplies in their hands, that we might be able to avoid some of the unnecessary deaths that occur because people just weren't prepared.
Yeah.
And so that's when our mission became, to put medically prepared people in families. And our job is really to have a cadre of trained medics, family medics, that will possibly save some lives in times of trouble.
Step up.
Yeah, right.
Bring their supplies.
How was it when you first came out as being into preparedness? How was that received, and by your colleagues and stuff?
They were received as I'm a nut. That's that's pretty much it.
Nah, that was not that many people that said that.
Well, they didn't say I was.
Okay, the people who were looking at us were people who wanted to find our stuff. So, the mainstream doctors out there still don't know we exist because we're not in anybody's face. You know what I mean? Like, I have a YouTube channel, but if they look for that, they'll find my YouTube channel. You know what I mean? If they look for preparedness information, they might stumble upon our book in Amazon. But most doctors out there have no idea that there's someone like us speaking about things, talking about in the book, a situation where they don't have all this equipment and diagnostic and lab tests and, tell them exactly what's going on. That you might have to use your eyes and your ears and your fingers.
People can't
figure out what's happening.
Right. People can't wrap their heads around that concept that,
right.
You may wind up being the end of the line. You may be the highest medical asset left to your family in times of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, that's funny you mentioned that. In 2012, I took over the security at the embassy in Baghdad. And I had been other places. And when earlier in the, 04, 05, 06, they had these great mass casualty plans. And in 2012, when I get up there, I got asked to come to the health unit, and they were going to talk about this, about a mass casualty plan. I get there. Well, somewhere along the lines and changing over the health unit every year or every 2 years, the old mass casualty plan got tossed out. No one remembered it. And it was like, no one had a thought about it. I mean, you're in Baghdad. You think that'd be one of the first things. And I remember I think she was a doc, and we're in this meeting, and she's like, well, if we have a problem, everybody's coming to the health unit. And the health unit was kind of on an exterior perimeter. And I said, well, what's your plan if the health unit's gone? What's your plan because they have these 240 millimeter rockets that would go through would just destroy a building. And I said, well, what's your plan? And she's like, well, why would we all be gone? I'm like, well, because if the health unit's blown up or you're dead or something else, what's your backup plan? Because when I was a medic overseas, I always trained my team because I wanted them to be able to work on me if I got hurt. And the one time we got smashed out, that's ended up exactly what happened. It was like I needed somebody to help me out.
Yep.
So no, it's good that you're doing that. I think everybody needs to be their own first responder in this stuff, especially with medicine.
Well, I'll tell you that the attitude that physician over there had is basically the attitude of almost all physicians here now. Is that they really can't imagine a situation where they wouldn't have, the high technology that's available to them now. They can't imagine a situation where that would not be accessible.
Right.
And so this is a problem, and this is a mindset issue that needs to change with medical personnel, but not only them, that needs to change with every person and whoever is going to be the medically responsible person in every family. They need to realize that there's a situation where they're going to be the highest medical asset left. And if they are, they need to be able to deal with at least the common issues that may occur in a unstable society.
Well, what kind of freaks me out is that, we had years of uncertainty. Is the world going to end? Is this COVID going to mutate where it kills everybody? I mean, we had a near-death experience. And usually when people have a near-death experience, they're a different person on the other side of that. There were people who didn't go seek care, probably knowing they had cancer or knowing they had some kind of issue. They avoided the hospital, but they didn't do anything else at home because they didn't know what to do. I mean, there was so many situations where, it could have been really, really worse. And if, like you said, we had a 5 or 10% death rate, portion of those are going to be doctors, going to be nurses, going to be lab techs, going to be, the truckers that bring the supplies to the hospital. I know I had trouble getting medical supplies during the pandemic because things weren't being shipped from China. China stopped, and China's where all the medical stuff comes from. We all want to buy American. That's great. Well, nobody makes gauze in America. No one makes Band-Aids in America, or hydrogen peroxide, or alcohol wipes, or betadine wipes, or anything that's in the hospital. Anything. Every single thing that's in the hospital comes from China. So they stopped bringing a lot of stuff over. So hospitals were scrambling to get supplies. They'd run out of stupid stuff like gloves and masks and hand sanitizer. Remember the hand sanitizer shortage? There were people who made whiskey who started making hand sanitizer instead. I mean, you would think that things like that, the toilet paper shortage, if nothing else is going to wake you up that we have a supply problem and it's all not coming from here. If you can't get toilet paper, what do you think's happening to everything else? I mean, why aren't we all preppers now? I just don't get it. People went back so much to normal, like, oh yeah, it's all going to be there. I'm like, you saw the meat department empty. We had a situation, there was not even a piece of hamburger in the meat department. It was empty.
It goes back to that to what you just said, right? That was a 1%, give or take, whatever it was, lethality rate of people dying for whatever reason during COVID. And now, if you push that up to 5 to 10% with how society reacted then, I think we'd be in full meltdown mode.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. We had hospitals that were overcrowded, and draconian measures being taken by government, state governments, and the federal government. The federal government. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy things that are going to happen, and a lot of basic services that may not be available. I mean, you would, if it's 10% death rate in the general population, it'd probably be 20% among medical personnel.
Because they're the ones who are getting exposed to it. They're the ones who are stepping in. It's like you as a military guy, you had more of a chance of getting a gunshot wound than your family at home in your hometown. They're putting themselves in the face of danger. And that's what, when you work in a hospital and that's where all of the contagious people are coming, they're more likely to get sick, mess up with their mask or their glove or take something off wrong.
With COVID this time around, the CDC actually said that if you have a mild to moderate case of COVID, that you should take care of that person at home.
Yes.
So
home care.
That's right, home care. And so, we wrote about how to put together survival sick rooms and things like that.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that
they had to do an isolation room, but most people don't know how to do that. How do you move from, the household where there's people who aren't sick into the location where the sick person is? And then how do you, decontaminate yourself before you're moving back into the area where the non-sick is? You need to have an area where you're either getting dressed or doing some, protocol, taking care of the person, then going back into that area, decontaminating yourself with, whatever it is that is affecting the person. So, people just don't know these things. Right. They don't understand.
I guess, what makes me worry sometimes too, when I think about this, is that if a more serious virus, bacteria, whatever comes around, that the politics of it all have people so entrenched on each side that, especially on the preparedness side, it's not like we're any more entrenched than the other side is, I guess, but that people would be quick to discount it. And my experience is, if you discount a virus until you know until it proves out one way or the other, you might be in a world of hurt.
Might be too late.
Yeah, because the virus doesn't care what your politics are. And so, I think we got lucky that it wasn't as lethal as it was. But, I remember early in like February and March, people that were just making these statements, this isn't anything. It's like, yeah, you don't know that yet.
It's very true.
I warned all of our family the third week in January. Mm-hmm. I sent out text messages to everybody and I said, go shopping right now. And I gave them a list of things to go get. And I went to Costco. I made a huge order from my medical supply company, who were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just, getting some extra stuff. I ran out of everything. I had huge deliveries of gauze and mylar blankets and triangular bandages and all the stuff that I needed to make medical kits. And I was like, and then they had limits of what I could order. So they would say you can only order 1 box of gloves this month. You can order 1 box of gauze. So then everything was limited. Things were delayed by months. And I was like the little mouse in the factory trying to find the cheese, but the cheese factory closed. I was just going everywhere. I go to the 10th page of Google to find some supplies just to keep putting the kits together. It was rough. It was really rough.